evening, everyone. Oh, let me turn that on. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Nevada City Council to order. Today is Wednesday, August 10th, 2022. It is exactly 6:30. I'm going to read us in from closed session, and essentially, we decided that there was no need for...
Yeah, nothing to report out.
Nothing to report out. That's what I meant. And then I'm going to ask Councilmember Klein to do the land recognition. Thank you, sir.
Right now?
Yeah.
We acknowledge the Nisenan people are still here among us today, though they are nearly invisible, and their story continues to be excluded from history. We understand we are on Nisenan land that was never ceded, and the original tribal families have yet to recover from the near genocide of their people. As a resident or visitor in Nisenan land, we support the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe in efforts to stabilize their people, as well as the campaign to restore tribal sovereignty through federal recognition.
Thank you. All right, so if everybody would stand, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance now. I think I will just start us off. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Deputy City Clerk, would you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Cece.
Here.
Councilmember Klein.
Here?
Councilmember Peterson. Present. Vice Mayor Fernandez.
Here.
And Mayor Fleming.
Here. Thank you. All right, now it's time to see if anybody wants to modify the agenda. If anybody wants to make changes to the agenda, now is the time, or pull consent items, now is the time. Do we have any agenda changes, recusals, or consent items that need to be pulled? Hearing none, I'm going to look for a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as is.
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes 5-0. All right, now we're going to go to presentations. Our wonderful city manager is going to be introducing a new employee today. Take it away, Sean.
Very good. I actually think Mr. Nick Kendrick was on the agenda last meeting, but we did the old switcheroo of who we were presenting. And you
sorry.
got to, it was a twofer. You got two officers for the price of one.
Oh.
But Nick, if you want to come up. This is one of our new officers, Nick Kendrick. He is a Sierra College and Yuba College graduate. He's been a Nevada County resident for a long time now and has always had an interest in serving his community through law enforcement. He's finishing up work at the community college and then be transferring to a bachelor's degree program soon. I promise that he is old enough to be a police officer.
Can we get proof?
Maybe that's just a sign of me being old, but you look very good, Nick. I appreciate you being here and being part of our community. But Nick is an outdoorsman in his time away from work when we give that to him. So there's probably no better place to be than right here in Nevada City, whether to be working as a police officer or to have opportunities for that outdoor living. And with that, Nick, if you want to come up to the lectern and say hi to the council and to those in attendance, that'd be great.
Hello, council. Do you want me to stand this way or that?
Just like that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to thank everyone for letting me start my career in Nevada City. It's been somewhere I've lived for a good amount of time, and it's always been my dream to be here. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks,
Welcome.
Nick.
As soon as the mayor says something.
Yeah. Mr. Clerk, would you like to get up and say a few words?
Few.
Well, more than a few. I know that's challenging for some of us.
The first thing I was told is make sure you all turn your mics on.
When I speak, I will.
Oh, good. Just as long as you remember, that's all I was told to tell you. Well, tonight I normally do other meetings going on, but I had someone ask me, excuse me, if I've ever looked my name up on the internet, and I said no, so I did. Very surprising. The surprising one was, there was an article in there in a publication called Nevada. And I read it, and it was a complete transcript of the meeting where the two councilmen were sworn in. All the pictures, everything else. This is longtime city clerk Neil Locke died after being sworn in.
No. Oh, Neil. So sorry for your loss.
Aware of two positives. The article misspelled my name,
Oh, good.
and I am alive.
Yes, very much so.
So that intrigued me, so I looked up where that all came from, and I said it was a publication called Nevada. And I looked at it, and it was all there. That's where I saw it. So I want to know where this came from. It came from Derek.News. And it was located in Bulgaria in 2005 by 21 journalists. And the only thing I know about Bulgaria is the capital, Sofia, and they make the best feta in the world. Other than that, I'm still alive, and I'll be here next meeting, God willing, and the dam doesn't break.
Oh, Neil, thank you. I'm so glad that you're here. That is wrong.
Also, Neil, you can set up alerts where anytime your name comes up on the internet, you can get an email that tells you about it.
Okay, now is time for public comment, and this is for public comment for things that are not on the agenda tonight. I know there's going to be some comment for some of the agendized items, but if anybody would like to make a public comment right now about generalized items, I see our good friend Charlie Price coming up there. Now is the time.
I'd like to speak to one of my graduates. Well, Zion Street has a speeding problem. I'm sure our law enforcement officers can judge to that. Zion Street has a speeding problem. Well, you can't really write a ticket if everybody's speeding, so you give them a ticket when school's in session for going over 25 in a school zone, even though it's a 25 zone period. Great solution would be raised sidewalks that act as, not sidewalks, crosswalks that act as speed bumps. Facilitate kids walking to school, people walking over to SPD Market. It would greatly slow down traffic without interfering with traffic and would help the safety of Zion Street. Thanks for your consideration. And I want to welcome Neil back.
Thank you, Charlie. It looks like we have another public comment. Come on up. That's you.
Very nice to see a lot of people.
Yes.
That Zoom thing got really tiring. My name's Jim Morris, 1073 Willow Valley Road, just outside the city limits, in the sphere of influence, close enough to walk to town. What I want to talk about is, and I really appreciate the traffic calming ideas. I mean, those are wonderful. Because speed limits don't do it. You need traffic calming features, your narrow lanes, or what Charlie suggested. What I'm concerned about is some issues we have with fire risk due to some of our mentally ill in town. Ones that have been cited for felony vandalism, arson, and this last week, 4 nights in a row, there was a lot of vandalism and damage through town. And I'm sure we all know one person in particular who paints her face red, but she likes to light things on fire. And I think that we really can't do much about her, apparently. She doesn't want to receive services, But what I think we probably should do, since there isn't much, she won't go into for help, is maybe hire someone to follow her around. At this time of year, it might be a prudent and cost-effective way of dealing with that issue and also the vandalism and the continuous work that Public Works has to put out just to clean up. I mean, it's remarkable once you start paying attention and where it's happening and how it happens. In addition to the screaming and the obscenities, like usually the beginning of the month. I'm told by her friends her best drug is meth. But the thing is, I think hiring someone to just monitor and follow would be a good thing, because they're in the forest around where it's very fire prone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I wasn't expecting to say anything tonight. My name is Julie Wagner. I've been here in Nevada City for about 45 years. My comment is, a lot of you might not realize it, but the Celio Barn at almost the corner of Washington and Broad and Boulder Street, many years ago, the advertisements on that building were absolutely fascinating and beautiful. And over the past 15, 20 years, they're fading, they're going away, and we're going to lose them really soon. I don't know, many years ago when my husband was on the Planning Commission, Rusty Schutz, which he'll come up again. Anyway, he and Lon Cooper fought to save those paintings, and I hope that maybe there's something we can have fundraising or something. I don't know who the owner is now, but it would be a shame to lose those. So maybe we can think about doing something about it.
Thank you so much, Julie. Hello.
Hello.
There you
I'm
go.
Abby Givens. I live at 11650 Banner Mountain Trail. And I have two quick comments. I'd like to encourage the police and all drivers of cars to watch how many people do what's called a boulevard stop. They're just rolling through everything, and it's pretty dangerous. And secondly, I didn't have a chance to look at the city council agenda, but if it's not on there, I hope we could agendize the Airbnb issue with a revisit with the attorney, city attorney, interpreting the exact wording of the law so that we can cut down on the number of homes that are being rented out full-time in small doses, obviously for investment purposes, but they're really not at home where they're living in the home like they're supposed to be, but they're not renting full-time, so there aren't rentals available. So it's not good for not just the image, but the whole feeling of the town. That isn't a town, that's more like Disneyland. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Are there any other public comments in the room? If not, we're going to go to cyberspace and check to see if people in the Zoom world have anything to say.
We do. If there's anybody that would like to make a comment that's on items not on the agenda, please raise your hand, lower right-hand corner. And we do. We have Matthew Coulter. Go ahead, Matthew.
Good evening. Yep, the Zoom feed, the sound is still super bad. The YouTube sound is much better. You can hear it. And obviously the pictures, one's facing one direction, one facing the other. But with Neil's comments, it made me think of what you see when you Google my name. And what comes up is the Union newspaper front page article of me doing felony assault on Nevada City police officers on Broad Street at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. There was no such event. Your officers dropped the charges, the city dropped the charges, they just kind of disappeared. But all my injuries remain from that event, including broken teeth and other things. And the damage from that one event is still resonating today, several years later. So yes, social media can make people think different things. And I'd like to speak a little bit later on the public filming situation, because that I think was the premises for me getting beat up by your police on the sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Do we have anybody else, Gabby?
We do not.
We actually have one more in the room, but you can certainly come on up, ma'am. Yep.
I just wanted
Star Carroll, 124 Boulder Street. I just wanted to say how wonderful it is now that we can all be back together in person. It seemed like a good opportunity to thank each and all of you for doing your civic duty to represent us and take care of the sometimes boring and unheralded business of taking the garbage out and getting the dishes washed for us here in Nevada City. So just want to thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks so much. That's very nice. Okay. Gabby, do we have anybody else in there?
No, we did not.
Okay. All right, now we're going to go on to the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine in nature and will be approved in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. So I'm looking for, having none of the items pulled, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. And a second.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
A second.
First by Daniela, second by Adam. Thank you both. It is adopted. All right.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if we could either a vote of ayes or a roll call at your discretion.
On the consent agenda, sure. All those in favor of the consent agenda as is, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Passes 5-0. Gabby. So thank you, guys. All right. Now it's time for the public hearings. Item number 6 is a public hearing, so we're going to open the public hearing. I want to hand it over to the city manager for a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I'm sure everyone in the room is aware, Nevada City is an attractive place. It's also an attractive place for filming. We've been the host city for a number of feature films, television, movies, commercials. I know I was in at least one commercial as a youth walking down the street here and got to watch the filming of a movie that was both here and Grass Valley, so exciting times. But we've been working with the Chamber of Commerce, or I've been working with the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce on potential economic development opportunities relative to our strategic planning process and how they overlap filming. And during that time, we've been contacted by a number of studios that have interest in filming here prospectively, likely in the beginning of the new year. Despite all the filming that's been done here in the past, we do not have an ordinance that regulates filming in the city. So the proposed ordinance before you tonight would add a chapter to our municipal code and would regulate filming activities on or using public property. So it does exempt your traditional exemptions, breaking news, criminal and civil investigations, private use like me filming my family Christmas card on the streets of Nevada City, government filming like is being done of this meeting right now, and student filming conducted as part of a school class or project. So if not exempted, the ordinance would require a permit that staff would issue after a review of the project. The ordinance does allow for a fee to be levied for that permit as established by the council. And if there's any need for road closures or staff standby or things like that, it would apply to the existing fee schedule for those kind of things. Like we charge $100 for the road closures to be applied and to be removed, when we're doing those kind of street assignments. And then actual costs if it was a requirement of staff time to stand by. So essentially just recovering our costs and executing those things. There's all kinds of fun things in our government code. One of them is that the California Film Commission is empowered to review and make comment on regulations, local regulations of film ordinances. And so we are obligated under that law to submit our proposed ordinance prior to it being adopted to the California Film Commission for the review. And we did that with this ordinance, and they sent it back to us. There was no substantial revisions, although we did incorporate the one thing that they commented on, which is the use of the term, quote, breaking news, unquote. So that is the only substantial item there. If they had made substantive changes that we decided not to put in, we would have to have briefed you on those, but there are not those. So what's before you tonight's been reviewed is consistent with what is done in many jurisdictions around us. So this is really just a cleanup item so that the next really neat movie opportunity that comes into town can be well regulated so that they can do the filming, but we also don't adversely impact the community or the business owners unduly without any kind of control mechanisms. So with that, this is a public hearing. I'd recommend that you conduct the public hearing and then hold the first reading by title only, and we can read it into the record before your vote. And we'll schedule the second reading for August 24th, and then this would go into effect 30 days after that second reading.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. All right, so we're going to check in the room. Does anybody have any public comment on this issue? Come on up, Charlie.
I have no idea this was an issue, but I just want to be sure that the filming of an event that is already permitted to happen, like concert associated with downtown Victorian Christmas, that the performer can be videoed for the performer's use on a website or to promote himself or herself in the future without a permit. It could be a belly dancing troupe, it could be anything. But if that artist is doing something that you've already approved, they should be able to be videoed.
Thank you, Charlie. All right, any other public comment in the room? Yes, come on up, Michael.
I wasn't going to speak about this, but my concern would be that public documentaries, would it create a conflict for public documentary of like South Yuba River or the Hot Summer Nights or just documentaries in general that wouldn't require street closings, but still is videoing public activities in a documentary format versus, so I guess my comment is, not to close out the possibility of somebody doing a public documentary that doesn't require street closures, but still filming public spaces.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. And just so everybody knows, we're not really allowed to respond to public comments in this format, so, no, but thank you for the comment. If there's not anybody else in the room, let's go to cyberspace there. Gabby, see if we have anybody who wants to comment on this issue. I think Matthew does.
He does. And anybody else out there that would like to make a comment on this issue, please raise your hand by clicking lower, or raise your right hand. Raise your hand in the lower right-hand corner. Woo. Okay, go ahead, Matthew.
Hi, mine's in the lower left corner, but it just seems like a slippery slope. And as long as your police department is fully trained on this, as well as other ordinances, because public photography, for some reason, people are unaware that it's legal. And I run into this almost daily where the police will show up and have to educate the people that you're in public, they can take a picture of you doing what you're doing, whatever that might be. People believe that they need to have a signed document to take their picture in public, from what I understand, and I've heard many, many times. So I'm concerned about how this will be used to stifle recording events. I understand that you say that it won't hinder events that are going on or news events or things like that. But that's the problem. It becomes so subjective to what is news, what is reporting. I post over 100 posts a day. Am I a reporter? I think I am. Am I protected by the First Amendment? I think I am. Yet, I've had my phone taken, my camera taken by the police and things like that. So there just needs to be a lot of clarity and training to your police if you're going to make this be enforced, because it's pretty lengthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Anybody else online there, Gabby?
Anybody else would like to speak on this topic, please raise your hand, lower right-hand corner. Or left corner.
Just lower, sorry.
Lower corner. Okay, we do not, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Gabby. All right, I'm going to bring it to the table. Would any of my esteemed colleagues like to comment on this? Lou, do you have anything to sort of?
No, nothing further.
Daniela?
Yeah, Sean, I'm wondering if you can speak to some of the concerns that were brought up by the public comments.
Yeah, so I think as a generalization, that the easiest way to answer it, which will very much sound like a cop-out, is that in addition to us having to submit this to the California Film Commission for their review, they are also required and empowered under the same government code to create model ordinance for this use. And what we are doing conforms with that model ordinance. It's also the same ordinance that is applied by the California Film Commission when issuing permits for things that they regulate. So they regulate the issuance of permits on state lands, on, the California Coastal Commission areas, things like that. While I understand the reticence, it makes sense to me. This is really dealing with, and there's in the ordinance under definitions, there's explanations of what, all of those things mean and what those exemptions are. I believe it's fairly unambiguous. We are not seeking to, stifle the ability of anybody to use their iPhone to film while they're out and about, but we are looking to ensure that there are regulations in place so that if someone wants to film a movie here and is going to impact our business owners, close our streets, make loud noises after hours, things that aren't allowed under our other ordinances absent such a permit, or, if it were a special event permit, that we have the ability to regulate that for the best interest of the city.
Great. And just for clarity, Charlie's issue about, let's say Jerry Bash happened last week. One of the bands wants to film their set. That's totally fine. It's not about, they're not a film crew making a documentary film about it necessarily. Or maybe they are. I don't know. What's the kind of regulations around that?
Yeah, so there would be overlapping interest there. If they're a film crew making a documentary of something, then they would require a film permit.
Great.
If they are just videotaping their band for placement on YouTube, then anybody can, videotape while they're there. Add to that, the other layer of that is a special event that has hard closures and entry, and so there are certain rights conferred to the people that are doing that special event, so they may request to do a film permit, or they may preclude that film permit if that was something that they wanted to do or not want to do. And I'm not speaking for the Jerry Bash in particular, but some people may not want their music events filmed. But yes, if you were doing a documentary filmmaking, that is some of the people that have reached out to us, and they are reaching out to us because they know that these are regulated and they want to comply and they want to do the right thing. And so that's a relatively normal thing with a relatively nominal cost.
Great, thank you for that clarity. And one last question. Under the permit review piece, it says the application shall be promptly reviewed by the film permit coordinator. Is that someone here in-house or somebody?
Yeah, so another section in there says that I'm the person responsible for that, and it's either me or my designee.
Awesome, thank you.
I should say the city manager's designee, because tomorrow you could say I don't work here anymore. There would still be someone that's the city manager who could designate a film permit coordinator.
Please come back tomorrow.
Good, all right. Gary, got anything? You don't have to.
No, I just wanted to comment that my experience in these permits are primarily focused on commercial activities that have an impact on city facilities where we need to consider cost recovery. That is the intention of these, documentary or otherwise. If someone's filming in your town and they're going to turn a profit on what they do and they're using your facilities, it's not about making money, it's about covering your costs. And that's essentially what this does. So that's my comment on it.
Thank you, good comment. Adam?
Yeah, we all walk around with cameras in our pockets now. So I think a lot of the questions Daniela had were important to ask, and I'm satisfied with the answers.
Cool. I used to do a little work around this too, and to your point, it's also a profit center for some cities, like in New York. They do make money on it, and because New York's unique and stuff, and same thing with certain cities too. One of the things I would hope is that we look at, what other cities are charging besides costs, see if there's any other money to put on top of these, not for the documentaries, but for the Hollywood companies who I know have lots of money. Also, there are lists that you can get on to market your city for locations. And so I would suggest that we look into doing that, so we could drive a little bit more. Either it's free marketing, if it's a good movie, maybe it's not, maybe it's not good marketing. But anyway, I'd like us to look at that. All right, so this is first reading. What are we doing?
Yes,
I'm
so
looking for a motion.
if you had a motion in a second, we could read by title only, and then you could conduct the vote.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion.
I move that we hold the first reading of this ordinance, and it's by name only. And it's number 2022-09, an ordinance of the City of Nevada City, California, adding Chapter 12.32, filming activities, to Title 12, streets, sidewalks, and public places, regarding the regulation of filming activities on or using public property of the city.
Thank you, Daniela. Can I get a second?
Second.
First by Daniela, second by Lou. All those in,
Roll call would be
okay,
appropriate.
roll call because it's an ordinance. Gabby?
Councilmember Cece,
Yes.
Councilmember Klein,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fernandez,
Yes.
and Mayor Fleming.
Yes. Okay. Moving on to business, the next item is a consideration of a request to authorize placement of a dedication plaque at the Pioneer Park Bandshell in honor of Rusty Schultz, and the donation of services to repaint the bandshell ceiling. That's a nice offer. I love this. I'll turn it over to the city manager again.
Great, and you already met Julie,
I
so
do.
she'll be coming up in a second. I have a couple things to say, but she could tell you more succinctly than me, but Rusty Schutz was a local architect. He was a planning commissioner for 9 years, serving here in the city. And in addition to a number of new locations throughout the city, he was the architect for a number of restoration projects, including the Nevada City Winery, which is directly behind you on Spring Street, the Hat Store, which is directly in front of you on Broad Street, and the Trinity Church on Nevada Street, among others. And he was the architect that designed the bandshell. His wife Julie is requesting to place a dedication plaque there in his honor. We do have a policy in the city for such things, although we haven't used it in the park for this kind of activity. All of our other plaque placements have been on benches. While it is allowed, it's slightly unique. It does require the council's authorization, and the policy suggests that you should weigh the relative impact of the person on the place and make that decision. So Julie's agreed to work with city staff for the final plaque placement location. We did reach out to the Nevada County Concert Band, being one of the largest consumers of the space of the band shell, and they were happy to support the placement of the plaque, and in fact had a couple of ideas of where we could position it to make it its best use, if that was Julie's interest. In the packet is a soft rendering of what the plaque might look like. There's going to be some slight language changes to it, but conceptually, it's about half of it is a recreation of one of the original drawings from Rusty of the bandshell, and then it'll indicate his name and him as the architect and the year and the like. So the final rendering will be approved by staff, and the final location will be approved by staff. Substantially, that will be your public works superintendent and your manager of Parks and Rec. If you like where it goes, if you don't like where it goes, it's my fault. With that, Julie is here and I hope would like to say a few words, and then I will hand it back to you, Mr. Mayor,
Thank
I
you,
would
Sean.
recommend you
Come on up,
approve.
Julie.
Well, I wasn't really expecting to make a speech, but anyway, Rusty enjoyed working with the city so much. He lived here for 45 years. He dedicated a lot of time. He loved working with Lon Cooper and Bill Falcone and a lot of people that are, sadly to say, are gone. But the bandshell was something that he took on. You probably don't remember, but somebody had the idea of putting a little gazebo as the bandshell, and he went, wait a minute, we can't have a gazebo in Nevada City. We're going to do this so that the whole community can use it. And he came up with a great idea. He talked to choral groups about the acoustics, making sure that the sound reflected really well. And as those who live around the bandshell know, it goes forever. And, you know, it just made him so proud that it was used so much. And I think it's time to get a plaque on there and acknowledge that he did it. I'm sorry that he's gone, but it's never too late. So I appreciate the ability. Also, I would love to get rid of that yellow color of paint. I can tell you I was there with him when he was doing some of his final inspections, and he went, "Oh my God, who painted it yellow?" I won't put any blame where it went. I know where it came from, but anyway, we won't go there. So anyway, I've already gotten some paint colors, nice gray that go with the rocks, and whatever it costs, I'm more than willing to cover that. No fundraising, no nothing. And at some point, it'd be really nice to have a little sort of a dedication for it. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Julie. Can I ask you one quick question?
Of course.
You guys were around when this was envisioned. Was it envisioned to be just an acoustic band shell, or was there talk of electrified music at any point, or did that come up at all?
I think generally it was, when it went from a gazebo to, wait a minute, this is something that the city needs, then it was going to be open for whatever.
Okay.
And obviously, it has been used for many things, so it's really I think it's a really great addition to our city.
It is,
So-
and we thank you and Rusty, and this is a
okay.
fitting dedication. I'm so
Well,
glad that you reached
Thank you
out.
so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
I certainly should public comment, and with your indulgence, Mr. Mayor, I would note that I don't live here. I would have to recuse myself from voting because I would have voted against the band shell because that was the place I could go and play in the mud and get in trouble from my parents when I was a kid. Before the band shell was there, that's where all the water from the field would go and just pool over there. So it's both an amazing place and took away my ability to get all my clothes dirty. But yes, public comment would be great, and then we'd recommend that you have a motion and a second to approve the item.
All right, thank you. Would anybody else here like to comment? And if not, would anybody in cyberspace like to comment? Gabby?
If you would like to speak on this topic, please raise your hand in either corner of the bottom of your screen. We do not have anybody, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, then I will bring it back to the table for a vote, unless anybody else would like to speak on this.
Sure, I would. Thank you, Doug. Is Neil still here? Thank you so much. And, it's just a personal thing, but I think yellow is really good for like birds, fish, and flowers, and that's about it. And this is the personal thing. But it's not, I really appreciate, I'm a huge fan of architecture, and what Rusty has done, like his cafe is, that patio area is one of the best places in town. The church is so beautiful. All the great work. And, we are the city we are because of people like Rusty that live here and make those contributions and make themselves available. So thank you so much, and I think it is a very fitting to honor him in this manner, and that we need, when it's ready, we need to do it right and have a celebration around it.
Yeah.
Here, here. Would anybody else like to comment on this table? Okay, not hearing any comment, I guess we are going to go for a vote. How about a motion? Yeah. Thank
I
you.
move that we adopt it.
First by Lou,
I'll second.
second by Gary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes 5-0. Okay. Yay. That was definitely a yay. Okay, moving on to business. We have a presentation from Pioneer Energy Company, Pioneer Community Energy on community choice aggregation, and we have some gentlemen here who are going to help us out.
I'll take it to start with, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I was bumping the air conditioning back
No
down.
worries,
It
no
was starting to heat up in here. So I'll briefly introduce the topic, then I'll hand it over. I have some experience with community choice aggregation, or CCA, from my previous life, but it's not that relevant. But when I started here, it feels like 7 years ago, but it was really 5 months ago. I found out that Grass Valley and Nevada County were moving forward with joining Pioneer Community Energy, CCA, but that Nevada City was not. And that's okay. That's not a problem, but I wanted to make sure that the council had an opportunity to decide if that was the policy direction that you wanted to take. So tonight you'll receive a presentation from Pioneer Community Energy on their CCA and how we might consider joining it. After which we'll ask that you consider funding half of an implementation study that would be brought back to you as the city council with the complete information for you to make that ultimate decision if you wanted to move forward tonight, or if you want to move forward in the future, and if that would be the right thing for energy consumers here in Nevada City. So with that, I will turn it over. It is not Mark Griffey, as I had in my notes. I apologize. It is Don Eckert, who's the Executive Director of Pioneer Energy. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. We do have a presentation, and so I want to thank the Mayor, City Council for having us this evening, as well as city staff and citizens of the city. Great introduction of what we're here about. Just to reemphasize about why we're here and remove any anxiousness about we're not getting rid of PG&E tonight. It's just talking about looking at an impact assessment study.
Everybody's going to leave now.
Well, not yet, but anyway, we're looking at an impact assessment study to see if it makes sense for you to join the JPA and for the JPA to accept you. So what tonight's really about is just to give you an overview of what a CCA is, what it can do for you. My feeling of what it can do for you is that it gives Nevada City a choice of your energy future. It allows folks to save on their utility bills, which we all need. And again, not replacing PG&E, but giving your citizens a choice, whether they want to do PG&E for their generation or Pioneer. Doesn't mean we're replacing it. It gives them a choice. So next slide, please. Thank you. So CCA, what does it stand for? So community, meaning that we are owned by the communities that we serve. So our board members is a member from each member agency that we serve. It's not weighted voting, equal vote for all, no matter the size of the member. Choice, just talked about that. This is about giving your citizens a choice. And then aggregation means we're not going around and picking one customer over another. If the city joins, all the citizens of the city are automatically opted in. It's perfectly legal, authorized in California through the Assembly Bill 117. So this was back in 2002. The first CCA was Marin Clean Energy in 2010, and then it's really taken off, and you'll see a map here in a moment. And what it does is it allows Nevada City to be able to take over the responsibility of the generation portion of the utility bill. And it's either, through forming your own JPA, becoming a department of the city, or joining another JPA. So next slide, please. So one big thing changes and three things remain the same. So what you currently have is on the left. You have PG&E, they purchase the power, they have the transmission lines, the distribution lines, they have the customer service, there's programs through PG&E, and the billing is through PG&E. What does Pioneer Community Energy bring to the table? We take over the purchasing of the power, the poles and wires stay the same, and then we are not replacing any. If, for instance, you opt in with Pioneer and you have some sort of a program you're on with PG&E, you stay on that program with PG&E, but you're also going to have a say-so in creating programs specific for Nevada City that your citizens can partake in. And then the billing, you'll see, and we'll go through that in a moment, but the billing would be we're not going to get a separate bill from Pioneer Community Energy. It's going to be a portion of your bill on the PG&E bill. So next slide, please. Who joins? So once the governing body votes to join a CCA or form your own, as I mentioned, in aggregation, all the citizens of the city that are eligible to partake are automatically signed up. Customers can remain with PG&E if they want, so it's about choice. And opting out is free. It can be done at any time. There'll be plenty of communications. So if you go forward with an impact assessment study tonight, there's at least 8 months from now of off-ramps for the city that you're not obligating the city in any way, shape, or form. So next slide, please. Actually, this map is probably a little dated. There's more CCAs that have formed since then. But we started off in Placer County. We expanded to El Dorado County, started service this year. And as the city manager mentioned, we're looking at Nevada County and Grass Valley joining us in 2024. So how it works is, and you'll see a schedule in a moment, but we have to have all the paperwork in with the CPUC by the end of this calendar year. And then there's a 1-year wait that's through the CPUC that makes us wait a year, and then we can start service in 2024. And really all along the coast, but what I like about Pioneer Community Energy is we're looking at being the CCA of this region. Next slide, please. So options for the city. Again, we're here, we like option 1, which is join Pioneer. The advantage is you're not going to be having any startup capital. This could be a really expensive business, especially in the power supply side, where you're going to need a lot of working capital to, between the time that the revenues come in, the power suppliers get paid first, and you're going to need, it could be in the millions depending on what the load looks like in working capital. If you join the CCA, really what's at risk is a maximum of $15,000 for the impact assessment study, which is your share, and my board supports this and would pay the other half of the share for the consultant to do this. There's no risk to the general fund on option 1. You could also form your own JPA where you do protect the general fund, but you have to find the startup capital. You want to become a department of the city, for instance, San Jose, San Francisco has done that, but you do put the general fund at risk. And option 4 is always do nothing. This is not a pressure to join us. We're here now because of the timing. So if I'm going to be able to get the paperwork to the CPUC by the end of this year, there's a lot of administrative hurdles I got to go through between now and December to make that happen. And that's why the timing for now. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the benefits to the city, we've talked about these before, but you take control of your energy procurement. You're on the board. You decide what our energy portfolio should look like. You set the rates for your citizens. You'll have a say in programs. We just formed a programs advisory committee made up of citizens of Placer and El Dorado County. We look forward to Nevada City being part of that as well. Economic development rates, you have a say in that. We have a Green 100, which is a 100% renewable product that could suffice environmental goals for the city or personal goals for your citizens to sign up for. And just an important point, PG&E is owned by shareholders. We're owned by all of you. So you decide your energy future, and we follow that. So to go through the rest of the presentation will be my colleague, Mark Riffey, who's our Director of Marketing. Thank you.
Will you take all questions at the end, or should we ask as we go?
Probably, it's your choice.
However you all want to handle it. We may be answering them in the next few slides, but if you have a question, we're here for you, so.
Great, I'll wait.
So who is Pioneer? As Don mentioned, we are a joint powers authority. We're currently made up of members, communities of the town of Loomis, the cities of Auburn, Colfax, Lincoln, Placerville, and Rockland, and most of the unincorporated counties of Placer and El Dorado counties. And I'll show you on a map in a minute what that looks like. We were launched in 2018. We have about 150,000 accounts throughout both areas. And we provide electricity rates and programs consistent with our local community goals. So again, as Don was mentioning, we work with our board, our voted members from the communities, and they tell us what's important to their constituents. Next slide, please. So this is a map of of our service territory today. And again, as I was talking about, you've got Placer and El Dorado County. On the eastern slope, you can see around the lake there, that's Liberty Utilities. That's the utility that's in Nevada that rolls around the lake and covers that area. We don't serve those folks. We don't serve Truckee Donner, that's a municipal utility. We don't serve Roseville because that's a municipal utility. Smud, as you can see, sneaks a little bit into Placer County, and again, we don't serve those folks. We have all of the PG&E customers in the Placer and El Dorado counties that we can. Next slide. So the governance, Don was talking about the seats on a board. We currently have the 9 board members. That's 1 from every member agency. Placer County has 2 seats. They're the founding member of this organization, and so today they have the 2 seats. If Nevada City joined, you all would have 1 seat as well. And what Don was talking about there is Nevada City would have 1 vote, El Dorado County has 1 vote. So it's not based on population, it's not based on when you join the organization. One agency, 1 vote, with the exception of the Placer County. One of the things that our board has set up for us is that we expand in like-minded communities. You know, Don mentioned we're looking at the foothills and opportunities there. We all know that those of us that live up here, I live down in South County, and those of us that live up here, we know we're different than the folks down in the other parts of the state. I won't call them any names. Next slide, please. So this is the process that Don was talking about here, and there's multiple steps, and as he mentioned, there's many off-ramps on this. And so the first thing is tonight, or once your council authorizes city manager to sign up to do an impact assessment and fund that 50%, that $15,000, we'll move forward with that. We then take it to our expansion committee, which is made up of some of our board members, because we want to make sure that our board understands the communities we're talking to and how they align with the goals and objectives of our existing members. Once we get approval to move forward from them, we take it to our board and we say, our full board, here's where we're going and working down this path. And they'll say, yes, we support this activity. The next step there is we have to actually update each member agency. So if Nevada City was to join, we would take it to the Rockland City Council, the Lincoln City Council, and just let them know this is what we're doing, because we're amending the JPA at that point, and every agency has an opportunity, and every council has an opportunity to say, yep, yea or nay. So we take it to them and say, here's the direction we're headed. At the same time, we bring the impact assessment results back to this council, and we share with you that impact assessment is going to identify the benefits to the community, the residents and businesses of Nevada City. It identifies the impact on Pioneer as an organization. It's a mutual agreement for both of us to say it's a win-win for all of us. At that time, if you all decide to continue to move forward, there are still off-ramps after that point. That's not like the last opportunity. So then at that point in time, we go to amend the JPA. We take it back to our board for the amendment of the JPA. We also come back to Nevada City and ask the council to vote to join Pioneer. So at that time, you guys will actually vote to join the JPA. And after that, the last step before we get into the end of the year. Now, this is all, as Don was talking about, for us to be launching in early 2024. This all takes place in 2022. And so the very last step then is that the Pioneer Board approves the amendment to the JPA. We come back to the board here, or the council here, for an ordinance, and we work with you all to make sure that everything, is you guys officially join the JPA. Once that's done, Pioneer staff will take that to the CPUC and say, here's how we're amending our JPA, and here's the results of impact assessment, and here's the agencies that are going to be joining us. And they have, I believe it's about 3 to 4 months in which they evaluate that. The last off-ramp opportunity is when Pioneer begins to buy power on behalf of Nevada City. And that is not until after the PUC approves that. So it is many, many months after that fact. And then at that time, we will be coming back in for education and awareness with the residents and businesses. So if we were to launch and start serving the community here in January, just as an example, January 24, in summer of 23, we would start doing outreach communication, workshops, webinars, community meetings, whatever's needed to make sure everybody's fully aware of what's taking place and answer all of their questions. Next slide, please. One of the biggest things that we get asked all the time is about solar. I think solar is pretty popular up here, is my understanding. I know in most of Nevada County it is. Pioneer supports solar. Pioneer has over 30,000 residential customers that are solar customers. A lot of times what you'll hear out in the community from folks who are in the industry is if you want solar, you have to stay with PG&E and you have to opt out of your CCAs. That is not a true statement. We constantly are educating our customers as well as our solar vendors out there to know that it is an option to be a Pioneer customer. There's 2 main differences with regards to being a Pioneer solar customer versus a PG&E. PG&E does annual true-ups. That means basically you pay your $10 a month or whatever it is and it rolls down at the end of 12 months, you write a check. For some of us, it's a painful check, and for some of us, it's close to zero. Pioneer, the reconciliation is on a monthly basis. So if you're getting a credit, you get that credit next month. If you owe $10, $20, you pay that the next month. And so at the end of the 12 months, there's not that one big check. That's a big difference for folks. There are times when you say, boy, at the end of 12 months, my bill is $0. Well, then maybe it's in your interest to stay with PG&E. We help customers with bill analysis on solar when they're asking for these types of questions during their enrollment period. We have told customers before, based on your situation, it may be in your best interest to stay with PG&E. We want to do what's right for the customers and provide customers with the information they need to make the best decisions for them. And if that decision is to stay with PG&E, that's okay. That's not, our goal is not to take advantage of somebody and mislead them to join us and have them end up being dissatisfied. Excuse me. Next slide, please. Sorry about that, Gary. So savings. One of the things that we're very proud of is that we actually help our customers save money. From 2018 through 2021, we just served Placer County and the cities that we mentioned earlier, unincorporated Placer County cities. Those communities saved $21.9 million. That's money basically meaning your bill was lower. It wasn't we wrote you a check, we sent money back to you. It was your bill was lower every month. And as we talk about economic development, we all know if I've got more money in my pocket, I've got more money to spend, and hopefully it's being spent locally, right? So we look at that as a great economic assistance for the regions we serve. 2022, a year by itself, due to number of changes with the PG&E rates and whatnot, those are the projected savings for 2022. Placer County is another $12.2 million. El Dorado County, first year with us, is a $6.3 million savings. And that takes place through a lot of different, every rate is different, so residential customers save one amount, business may save another amount. Next slide, please. So this slide's just a quick comparison that we like to show folks as it relates to as of June 2022. You have to realize, for example, PG&E's rates were changed in January, March, and June. Pioneer's rates changed in March. Pioneer evaluates their rates on an annual basis, and the last time we changed rates was in October of 2019. So we don't change them that often. PG&E is traditionally 2 to 3 times a year is not out of the norm for them. So this is as of June of 2022. You can see there the generation rates across. There's the Pioneer standard rate, then we have the Pioneer green rate. The Pioneer green rate, customers pay 1.088 cents more per kilowatt hour to get 100% of the energy you're consuming from a renewable source. For an average customer, that's about $7.50. So maybe a cup of coffee and a donut. I'm not sure what that amounts to, but it's $7.50. The third column on the right-hand side there is you see the PG&E bundled rate. Some of the things you can see there across the board there, the PG&E delivery rate is the same for all of us, right? It's what we pay for PG&E to bring the product to your meter, the electricity to the meter. The generation rate on the top is you're buying electricity from Pioneer or you're buying electricity from PG&E. PG&E surcharges, you can see there's 2 different numbers there. And one is the what they call the power charge indifference adjustment that we all pay. But then franchise fee surcharge is something that Pioneer collects and then passes it through. PG&E's rate is embedded in other parts of their bill. That's why it's called a bundled rate. The bottom line there, you can see the PG&E bundled rate is actually lower than the Pioneer green rate, and again, $7.50 or so more than the Pioneer standard rate. That's just for an average residential customer. PG&E claims that's about 690 kilowatt hours a month. You can figure out where you would go from there. Residential customers right now are saving about 6.5% on generation. And so that number changes, and the PCIA there, PCIA is dependent upon the year you join. So on this analysis, it's a vintage rate of 2022. If Nevada City was to join, it would be what's called a vintage rate of 2023. What that number is, we don't know, because PG&E submits that on an annual basis to the PUC. It would be in the neighborhood of that number. It's not going to be changing drastically in either direction. But one of the things that we do is we make sure our customers understand those changes when they come out. Next slide, please. Okay, good, you got me there, Hardy. This is probably my favorite area, Pioneer. A lot of people say, what can you do for us? Yeah, you don't have the poles and wires. We don't own the poles and wires. PG&E is still going to deliver the product to your house. But one of the things we do is we stand alongside our customers and, when necessary, in front of our customers. We advocate for the communities we serve. So if you're in a neighborhood and you're not a Pioneer customer, but we serve that community, we're going to advocate for you. And so you hopefully will get the benefit. Our goal is to make you want to come and be a customer of Pioneers. You all, I know, are probably very familiar with our PSPS events that we've had a few years back where they shut off power in advance of fire, fire prevention and whatnot. We advocated with the PUC and the California CCA Association to start trying to get PG&E to be held accountable, report out what is going on and the impacts to the customers. A lot of agencies and a lot of folks were not aware of the impact, especially to the foothills. You remember, they may not have PSPS events down in Monterey, but over here we had them all the time for great periods of time. The second item, which is the newest, latest trend, is the EPSSs. Those have already started, in case you all haven't experienced those yet. And what that is, it's enhanced power line safety shutoffs. What they basically do is increase the sensitivity of the equipment, which means they're going to shut off at a faster rate. The goal there is to, again, prevent fire. It's a great thing. We need stuff to prevent these forest fires that we've been having in our communities because they're horrific. One of the things we discovered is that the EPSSs were not held to the same standard the PSPSs. We brought that to the attention. This is just an example of the advocacy that we do for our customers. We brought that to the attention of the CPUC as well as our trade association, and we used actually the residents in Georgetown. We were up there for a meeting, and the folks in Georgetown brought it to our attention about all these shutoffs that nobody could explain, including PG&E. We started investigating it, and we found out that it was these so-called EPSS events. Well, the then president of the PUC, Batcher, actually wrote 2 letters to the PG&E executives and had public comments in which she referenced the treatment of El Dorado County residents as unacceptable. And she used language that we put in a letter that we sent to the PUC. So we are heard. We're very proud of that. So we fought on behalf of little old Georgetown. And it turned out that it ended up making it to where now they're being held responsible for reporting out these EPSS events. AB 843 is a bill in which Pioneer, we were the subject matter experts presenter on, and we supported that, and it's been passed. And what that basically does is open up funding for biomass projects to CCAs. In the past, it was only limited to the IOUs. We've talked to many communities that are looking at biomass, get the fuel off the forest floors. What can we do for that? We don't want to truck them all the way down to Lincoln and whatnot because of that's the environmental impacts that has. And so this bill is currently at the PUC for implementation, will allow us to work with our member agencies to site smaller local biomass facilities to consume the fuel where it's at. And so it's a wonderful thing. We're very excited about that. Local spending, our first option is always local vendors. We talk about including power supply contracts. We have contracts before we even started serving El Dorado County, we signed a 10-year lease or 10-year deal with El Dorado Irrigation District for power. We have contracts with PCWA for power. We work with agencies down in Lincoln and whatnot for power. But we also shop local. All of our marketing, all of our printing, everything we do is a local. I like to say that 30% is in our service territory, 40% of our spending is in the Sacramento region, and 70% is in the state of California. Our board has made that a priority. We look for local, we look for on-premise biomass and whatnot that's affordable, that we can support our local business communities. And the last thing there was, unfortunately, the river fire. We all know about the damage that was done up there. Our board voted to waive up to $50,000 in customer utility bills if they lost their house. You may not realize this, but you still owe the money for the electricity you consumed last month if your house was destroyed in a fire. Our board said we're waiving 2 months of bills and up to $50,000, and if we cross $50,000, we'd go back to the board for more. So we're very proud that our board was willing to support and help those that needed it. So the next slide, this gets to our next steps, and this is where we're at tonight, and Don already mentioned this, and I think Sean did as well. We're requesting that council authorize the city manager to move forward with the impact assessment at a fee of $15,000, and then Pioneer would also pay $15,000. Upon completion of that assessment, Pioneer will come back to the board or to the city council with a recommendation related to the next steps as far as it relates to joining the Pioneers JPA. And with that, that is my last slide, except for my contact information. Anybody that wants to write it down, they can call me, or you can talk to Sean, but we'll be happy. I'll turn it back to the mayor for questions, comments, or whatnot.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Don, too. Do we want to look for public comment first, or do we want to just go straight to the table and start talking? What? Public comment. Hey, is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on this? We got two people. Come on up. Michael and...
Hearing the presentation, a couple things came up for me. The power source. It seems to me that, we live in the NID Irrigation District, Nevada Irrigation District. They have a considerable amount of power that they sell back to PG&E. It seems like it might make sense to check with PG&E to see whether they're willing to sell their power. And I know PG&E buys their power from them, and then PG&E marks it up. And if there can be a local source for power that they can create an agreement with, then come back and sell it to us, it then becomes kind of a sustainable idea. Anyhow, that's kind of one of my thoughts. The PSPS brings up a concern that by going with this company, that the PSPS system of notification is very complex and very in-depth, and I think we'd have to really be careful that we're not overstepping that notification process. The EPSS, I think it's complicated to expect to have notification of that system, because that system is actually designed to automatically kick off if it senses any kind of a problem. So I think expecting any kind of a notification for an EPSS is challenging. That's designed to cut power to not start a fire. So there's no way to notify people that's happening when it happens. New PG&E. Then the other concern I would have would be that PG&E is always creating new programs for storage, power storage, and I would be careful not to limit ourselves from not being able to take advantage of new programs provided by PG&E. And I know what's coming up with I'm running out of time. I know that with this new proposal that was just signed, there's billions of dollars being pumped back into being sustainable, and those programs will be offered through PG&E. That's what came up for me.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Hello.
Kathy Wilcox Barnes. Just a real quick question. Couldn't hear everything at the back of the room. It was kind of a little bit muddled for me. So we may have answered it while they were doing the presentation, but what are the impacts on the undergrounding monies that used to be Rule 20? I'm not sure what it is anymore, that gets set aside for Nevada City for undergrounding. I just think we should look at that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Hello.
Abigail Givens. Micro question and a macro question. Do you have any potential plans for different kinds of generation of electricity from everything, not just biomass, but waste of all kinds? Because there are now, of course, combustible systems that will burn everything. Is that something that would be possible to have in small communities, in small areas within a county like this, that could do a lot for providing power without all the transportation of waste for 20 miles, clean up the forest, which are so overgrown now that it's dangerous, so forth. And then micro question is, I happen to opt out of the smart meter system of PG&E, and the way they say they do it is to read the meter every other month. but they're never close to what it really is, and they average with what it was last year, and that's very far from the true use of power because there were more people living in the building. So how do you handle from the macro to the micro? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any, we got one more public comment, come on up, Jim.
Well, I appreciate the comment and support for the advocacy, regarding the distribution system, because right now the PSPS and the quick trip thing, we have utilities coming through our parcel. There's a easement by PG&E with one power pole with a meter, with a transformer, and the amount of trucks and traffic that's gone up there to find that missing pole, which every time I tell them in many years, we've been there 30 years, I know where the two poles are. But it's just comical. We had, last week, there must have been 6 or more trucks coming up, and contractors, PG&E, and they weren't even talking to each other. But the quick trip thing is the rapid, it is, there's no warning. And the helicopters fly around for over an hour and before they can release and open, turn it back on, looking for some. So any advocacy to the distribution system issues and problems, I very appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, is there any public comment online?
There is at the time. There is Matthew Coulter. Go ahead, Matthew.
How about now? Am I there?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'd like Nevada City to think big and think about being an example for how we use our power that we do generate. Right outside your window, behind you, there's some string lights that run 24/7. There's a lot of lights that run 24/7 in Nevada City. I watched this gentleman's presentation in the Grass Valley City Council meeting, as well as this one tonight. This one was a little more in-depth. It would be great if we could consider, as I did at one time to an organization in Truckee, is actually paying a couple kilowatt cents more and knowing that I'm buying green energy. At the end of May, there were 2 days in California's first time in history, the state was able to generate 100% of its usage, of course, minus automobiles and such, green energy. Because that was before the air conditioners flipped on and the heaters were turned off. And it was just like that golden time where we reached that time where it was all generated from less polluting energy than what we would normally use. So I hope Nevada City can think, being the home of PG&E since it started here, being the home of the Pelton wheel that was invented right there on Spring Street in Deer Creek to change the world for power generation, that you guys as a council can take on power as one of your initiatives to do more than just what everyone else is doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Do we have anyone else?
If you'd like to speak on this topic, please raise your hand. We do not.
Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the table and then give you guys a chance to answer some of those. I'm going to start with Gary, since I think he'd like to talk about this.
I always like to talk.
I meant about this.
Oh, about this. Now, thank you for the presentation. I think I have an extensive background, was representing the city of Salinas with the foundation of Central Coast Community Power, which has been just incredibly successful. This, in my opinion, well, a couple of things. Many big fans of PG&E in this room. You should go read the history of why this law was passed in 2002 and it took to 2010 before somebody could do it. Check out that history. It's a pretty fascinating read. This is the way forward. We need to determine our own use of energy, our own acquisition of energy. We need to localize it and support it. And this is what we found in the community aggregate in Central Coast, where it began with Monterey County, is now in San Luis Obispo County and moving towards Santa Barbara. The more numbers that are in this, the better it is for all users. One of the primary differences I think that's so important is that the money gets made off of the sale of energy. With PG&E, it goes to stakeholders. With community aggregate power, it stays with us. I'm not sure how it will be handled with Pioneer. I'm curious about that. But in many cases, investments in power generation, which I'm hearing about the biomass, is because when you begin to generate your own power and then buy your own power, it becomes even more effective. So it's a real cumulative effect. I know in my household, we will be looking at the green option. Green power will only become more cheaper if we continue to buy it, and this provides a really good way forward to do that. These done well and well managed, you will not notice the difference between PG&E. In fact, your bill will come very much like the PG&E. You'll need to learn to read it a little different. You always have the ability to stay with PG&E if that's your desire, and good for you if you do. But I think that is an enormous benefit for our region, and that I would certainly support us moving forward in at least doing the study to understand what the potential benefits are. And I think you'll be really impressed with what we're facing.
Thank you, Gary. Adam, do you have anything to jump in on?
I'm excited about the idea of turning a liability, local biomass into actual energy that we all use. Just the dead trees, dead limbs, turning that into something useful instead of a constant threat would be great. That's what I got.
Thank you. Lou?
Yeah, I have a few cost concerns, and one is, other than the $15,000 we might be authorizing tonight, would there be any future costs to the city for joining this Pioneer Community Energy? If Pioneer Community Energy makes a decision or a policy that we don't like, do we have the right to amend or reject it? And finally, if we decide at any point to pull out of Pioneer Community Energy, is there a cost or penalty for doing so?
Good questions. Daniela, would you like to go ahead and
Yeah.
and they can answer all these questions?
Sure. Thank you so much for your presentation. You did answer some of my questions in the rest of the presentation, so thank you for the reminder of patience. Just a point of clarity, I think one of the slides said Nevada City would get a seat on the board, and then it was spoken that Nevada County would as a whole. So just point of clarity there. I think my understanding is that the county would get a representative. And then that's it. Nothing new to add.
You guys can go right ahead and answer these questions. I just got
to answer that one. So yes, Nevada City would have one seat on the board, Nevada County one seat, as well as Grass Valley.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
I can do questions.
Yeah, why don't you just, go ahead, right ahead and answer.
So as far as the cost to the city, it's the up to $15,000, hopefully comes in less than that. There's no other risk to the general fund, so it's our costs are recovered through the rates. You set the rates, but we are not coming back to the city for any other sort of cost or subsidies of any kind. It's rate-funded JPA. And as far as leaving the JPA, if you were to leave it, then there would be liability for the power that we procured on your behalf, but that's the extent of the liability. And I believe there's a fourth question. I can't remember it now, but if you shoot it over to the city manager, I'll get it answered at another time.
Just one question I have too. So this sort of came up for me a couple of years ago. We started talking to companies about doing microgrids. This was during the height of PSPS. Everybody was looking to get out from under PG&E's yoke. And so just talk to me a little bit about how this would work with a microgrid if that's the way we went. And is it compatible? Do you guys do microgrids?
We have looked at them. I know PG&E is doing some pilots out there as well on that. No impact at all. So if you're already on some sort of a microgrid, joining Pioneer has no impact, and we are looking at that as an option for some of the areas that have been hardly hit by PSPS.
Cool, thanks so much. What about the impact assessment? Who would conduct that?
Yeah, so we have a consultant that is widely known amongst the CCA community called Pacific Energy Advisors, well trusted by the banks and the CCAs to do that study, and it's about as unbiased as you can get, so we trust them.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
If we don't have any other questions from the council, I guess we have to vote to authorize the $15,000.
And, just one other, go ahead, I'm sorry. I'm just going to answer a few of the questions that I can remember from the audience. So regarding procurement, let's say with NID. So one of the first things we did with El Dorado County is sign a 10-year deal with El Dorado Irrigation District. We also have a lot of our power through PCWA, Placer County Water Agency. We look forward to doing business with NID if they have the capacity. If it's not all under contract, we will. Some of the other questions, no impact to, if you under a current PG&E program, joining Pioneer does not impact that program at all. And suffering from memory loss, I'm sure there's some other questions, and I will reach out to the city manager to get those answered.
Thanks
But,
so much. Gary, I think you had something?
I think the one other one maybe was from Kathy about undergrounding. PG&E
Absolutely no
retains that.
impact. So we don't own the transmission distribution system, that's PG&E. Whatever plans they have for undergrounding, this does not impact that at all.
What about notifications for outages, PSPS and things like that?
Absolutely no difference. So the customers that we have that are part of Pioneer and those that are with PG&E get the same notifications.
Okay, thanks. Did you have anything?
I'd like to make a motion
Oh, there we go.
that we authorize the city manager to initiate an implementation study for the purpose of evaluating Nevada City joining Pioneer Energy in an amount not to exceed $15,000.
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a first by Gary, a second by Daniela, and I'm going to just do all in favor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? And our city attorney has some issues with it. No abstentions, it passes 5-0. Madam Deputy Clerk. I know everybody's been really patient here. There's a lot of people here for public comment. We actually have extra police in the background just in case things get frisky. But I'm going to recommend that we have a 5-minute bio break for the council because this is going to go for a little bit. So I hope you guys can stay with us and we'll get through this as quickly as possible. Thank you. All right, folks, we're gonna get this party started. Hello? Can you hear? Yeah, you can hear me. All right, the next item, it should be no surprise, it is the discussion of the Historic Neighborhoods District Initiative initiated by the voters. Just like to clarify that today is a procedural conversation. We have certain options that we have to do by law, and I think a lot of people know what they are, but we're going to go over them, and then we're going to have public comment. This is what this is all about, is about the public on both sides of an issue that has got some concerns, talking and expressing their feelings to us. What I would ask, though, during public comment, if somebody has made a comment that's similar to yours, for the sake of brevity, let's just not repeat comments over and over again. You're certainly welcome to. I'm not going to stifle public comment, but just in the name of getting through this and getting everybody home before 9:30 or 9:30 cutoff. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to our city manager, Sean Grayson.
Thank you again. Last item, so I hate reading staff reports to you. I think you know that I don't read directly off the staff report. So this is not exactly directly from the staff report, but because this is procedural, I'm pretty much just going to walk through the staff report components because it's the timeline, and then I will hand it over to Mr. Keith Collins from the City Attorney's Office to share with you your options and obligations this evening. So on May 18th of this year, the proponents filed a proposed initiative measure referred to as the Nevada City Historic Neighborhoods District Initiative. This was not initiated by the city council or city staff, but the California Elections Code requires the city to take certain steps for any such submitted initiative. Nevada City's had many of these over the years. In accordance with the Elections Code, the city attorney prepared a ballot title and summary, and on June 8th of this year, the proponents filed proof of publication of the notice of intent to circulate the petition. That started a 180-day time frame for them to circulate the petition, which is where they would collect signatures. The requisite amount of signatures was determined to be 245, which represents 10% of the 2,454 registered voters. As noted by the Registrar of Voters for the county, those are voters in Nevada City, though. On June 23rd of this year, the proponents submitted their petitions, and the city clerk's office conducted what's called a prima facie review of the submitted petitions, and in accordance with the Elections Code, it was determined that the petition contained 369 signatures, which is over the required threshold. Therefore, the petition was accepted. And then under the law, the city had 30 days, excluding Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays, of course, with which to verify the signatures on the initiative petition. The signatures on the petition are verified to determine whether or not those who signed the are within the city limits, and that is done by the Registrar of Voters or the ROV in the same fashion that any other election activity would be, including our most recent city council elections. They're the ones that handle the actual count or verification of the signatures. So on July 13th, we transmitted those petitions to the ROV. On August 2nd, we received the final confirmation letter that there was a sufficient number of signatures related to that 10% number. Based on that information, the Deputy City Clerk deemed the petition sufficient, and the requirement there is to issue a certificate of sufficiency, which has been issued. And then consistent with the Elections Code, the certificate of sufficiency, the item has to be submitted to you, the City Council, at the next regular City Council meeting, which is tonight. So with all of that said, the process is stepwise fashion in place to get to you this evening. And with that, I will hand it over to Keith Collins from the City Attorney's Office. He's joining us by Zoom this evening, which you'll be able to see hopefully on the monitors in front of you.
Before we go to Keith, Mr. Mayor, just briefly, just to reiterate, I've assigned this matter to an elections specialist on my team, Attorney Keith Collins. Sean just indicated he's on to answer some questions. I'm going to have him first. We'll kind of tag team any legal questions that council may have tonight. And then I'll have him introduce what the council's options are tonight. I know the council's already been briefed, but the Elections Code is very specific as to the options that are available. So, Mr. Collins, if you want to brief council on those briefly, thanks.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Pucci. The staff report that your city manager, Mr. Grayson, just gave is very complete and accurate. It very succinctly lays out the options that are before you. One thing I would like to add is a fifth option that we didn't include in the staff report, which is that the city council does have the option to file a lawsuit in Superior Court to seek a declaration from a judge that this measure that was submitted by the voters and received the adequate number of signatures is a valid exercise of the initiative power. We didn't include it in this staff report because it involves initiating litigation, and that's a discussion that City Council should have in closed session. But it is an option in addition to these four. By law, you are required to take one of these actions tonight. The Elections Code is very specific on that process, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about initiatives generally or this petition specifically.
Thank you.
Do you want to review the four? Do you want
Yeah,
Keith?
Keith, go ahead and review the four options, setting aside the litigation option.
Sure. So the first option that you have is to just adopt the ordinance, do the first reading and put it on the books. The second option is to call for the initiative to be placed on the city's next regular municipal election that will occur not less than 88 days after the date that the election is ordered. So you have the option tonight to order that this measure be submitted to the voters at your next regular municipal election, which would be June 4th, 2024. The third option would be to call for the initiative to be placed on a special election occurring not less than 88 days, nor more than 103 days after you call the election. So that would allow you to call this election and order that this measure be placed before the voters at the upcoming November 2022 election. It would be a special election, even though it would be consolidated with the regular election that's statewide. And then your fourth option is to order a report analyzing the impact of this ballot measure. So you would direct staff to review the measure in detail and provide some analysis as to how it would impact the city and the finances and the processes that the city has in place. That report would be due in 30 days. So the city staff, if that's the option that you choose, would have 30 days to run the analysis, produce the report, and then present it back to you. And then within 10 days of them presenting that report to you, you would then have to either adopt the ordinance under option one or call the election either a general or a special election. So those are the four options that are before you tonight.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right, so we're going to open it up for public comment. Thanks again for everybody for your patience here. It doesn't look like we have a significant number of people, but I would suggest you guys get up and line up in order if you want to speak. I don't think we have over 30 people, so I think we're going to keep it at 3 minutes each, but I would appreciate it if everybody is as succinct as possible and just express yourself as nicely as possible. I know you'll do that, Charlie.
Charlie Price, I've got 620 Zion, 624 Zion, and 624 and a half Zion. And I found out about this through the Union paper. As a property owner here, I wasn't notified of this whole ongoings. And when I saw the map, it looked like tentacles coming out of Nevada City rather than a radius coming from the heart of Nevada City. And I discovered that my property is in one of those tentacles, and that section of Zion Street is, between Nevada SPD, our major market, and one of our only gas stations on the other end, with a school in between, and a smattering of a combination of residential and business. Chiropractor might be next to a home, and it didn't make any sense to me that it seems like what you want is people coming into town to go through a historic residential feeling as they enter into the core of the town, not these tentacles radiating out. So I don't know who drew this map, but I wish that we had some more options, that instead of just this or nothing, as a local property owner, and I guess a businessman. I have six units, which I don't think it's appropriate for the particular piece of the map that I'm on. I don't know how other people feel. I like the concept, but I think it's overreached. Thanks.
Michael Taylor, District 1, just outside of the sphere of influence. I thought that I understood the options a little bit different than what I just heard. I believe that if I understood it correctly in talking with Sean and listening to the attorneys speaking and also at other times, it appeared to me that you guys have the option to adopt it as written. You also have the option of asking or requesting a 9212, which that would be what I'm up here speaking for. I honestly think that's my recommendation, is to ask for a review and a study. But it's also my understanding that after the study, that you guys could make a recommendation to the petitioner for changes. So I thought that there was an option that allowed you guys to review it, review the study, and then make a recommendation to the petitioner for changes. I didn't hear that just now. I'm not recommending that. Anyhow, my recommendation is to see the study done and then go from there.
Thank you, Michael.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, esteemed council members. I'm Daniel Ketchum. I have the privilege of serving as the president of Nevada County Historical Society. Historical Society was founded in 1944, with Nevada City being our operational base for the past 78 years. Today, we operate the Firehouse Museum No. 1, Narrow Gauge Railroad Museum, and the Searles Historical Research Library, each located here in Nevada City. Of our approximate 400 members, many live here in Nevada City. Needless to say, this society has deep, deep roots in Nevada City. Our mission statement is celebrating and preserving the history of Nevada County. So rightfully so, we are highly concerned as to the very real detrimental effects of SB 9 that may bring to many fine residential neighborhoods within Nevada City. This is the very reason that the Society is the co-sponsor of the Historical Neighborhood District Initiative. Society Board of Directors has embraced the Historical Neighborhood District Initiative, as SB 9 specifically provides for exemption of properly established residential historical neighborhoods. The authors of SB 9 recognize the profound need to exempt specific and relevant residential neighborhoods within cities from high-density subdivision of residential parcels and future development of homes that may have no historical relevance. Let there be no misunderstanding that such development may not occur immediately, but unquestionably will occur over the time, bringing irreversible change to our historic residential neighborhoods. The worthy historic preservation of the downtown commercial district over the past 54 years is without question simply remarkable. Similarly, the proposed historical neighborhood district initiative will simply continue the very same review procedure in existing residential neighborhoods as it has successfully done so for the past 30 years. We urge you without delay to send this worthy initiative for immediate voter determination as to the future of their neighborhoods in the November 2022 election. I thank you for permitting me to share the Society's position on this very important matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
I'm Hank Meals. I first bought land in Nevada County in 1973. That's 49 years ago. I've stayed. I've been here ever since. Most of that time I've spent in Nevada City. And this is my observation about Nevada City people. People who live here have a strong sense of place, partially because of the integrity of its architecture, which in turn nurtures a sense of pride that fosters community. It was true then, and it's true now. Having said that, I encourage you to hold a special election, let the citizens speak, November 8th, 2022.
Thank you. Hank?
Jim Morris again. My suggestion is the option 4 to do the study. I would recommend that. I'm really concerned with workforce housing and people being priced out of this town. And I think the SB 9 is and I don't expect everything to get ruined. I think that's scare tactics. But in any case, I would suggest we look at the impact of this and provide a study.
Thank you, Jim.
John Givens, 11650 Banner Mountain Trail, Nevada City, and right on the edge of the sphere of influence. My wife, Abby, and I arrived here, I can't believe it, 39 years ago, looking for a weekend and summer place. When we saw Nevada City, we were just astounded, immediately fell in love with it. And I was wondering how in the world has this place survived and survived all the changes since 1983. I think it's because we stand on broad shoulders. The tradition of preserving Nevada City stretches back in modern times for at least 60 years. And I won't go into naming all the people who have been responsible for this extraordinary place. I don't think we're any different. I think the people who are here today love and care about Nevada City as much as those people who are here. And by the way, this stretches back, I believe, to 1849. So I would support the historic initiative in light of SB 9. I want to say one thing that I was advised against saying it, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you want to know what Nevada City will look like if we don't work hard to preserve it, all you have to do is look at Cash and Field. Now, that's tragedy. Half that units there, maybe. A third of the units, why not, in theory. But in reality, Cash and Field is built on a toxic waste site. And that's why it's a tragedy. In the future, it will become quite apparent the consequences of building there. So we need to maintain local control over the development and the planning for Nevada City. If we lose that, well, I don't think the county cares, I don't think the state cares, but I think we care deeply about what our community is going to look like. So I encourage this. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Good evening. My name is Katie McCammett. I am a Nevada City homeowner and business owner, and lucky enough to be able to walk from home to work. I'm also an architect, a developer, and make my living as a development consultant. I spend my life in housing budgets. Nevada City is not threatened by SB 9. There's no rush of developers coming here. We would be lucky to have a few more people trying to build housing here. But there's no profit to be made here. It's too much hassle. So as a business owner, I can tell you, I think many business owners can tell you, our number one threat is lack of housing. The only way I was able to hire a person was to let her work remotely and have her drive from Chico twice a week. So that's our biggest threat, is the lack of housing. A lack of housing for people who work here, for businesses, for our kids. And that is what I would urge you to look to. I don't think this historic initiative is taking us in the right direction. If you could, I would urge you to vote it down tonight. But that's not one of your options. So it definitely deserves much more elaborate study on how Nevada City is going to address its housing problem. Not with government subsidies, but with small, independent, private people building an ADU in their backyard, splitting a house into 2 units. I think there are a lot of ways we can do that and really maintain our character and our walkability. That's the study I want to see. Not shutting things down, but actually addressing our problems and moving forward. So I would urge you to take the study approach as a first step of a much longer and more elaborate housing element, where we really look at how we can bring housing, not big projects, but small homes, into the character of Nevada City and actually improve our character that way. I really feel like people have no faith in architects. If you think a bunch of slapped up houses out of plan books from 1868, when nobody even thought they were going to stay here very long, is better than what we can do today. So I would urge you to take the study approach.
Thank you, Katie.
Hi, I'm Tom Dykstra. I've been a resident in the city limits for quite a few years, and I just caught wind of this. I got back from a trip abroad and saw the paper, and I just wanted to encourage you to consider putting it on the general election ballot. And I also I would love it to have time to flesh out for the public and get all the facts in line and whose lots would qualify or not. Are there other ways to limit the growth without adding the historical district to additional areas? So I urge you to put it on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
I already spoke, but I didn't use my whole three minutes. I just wanted to mention that that somebody living in a cottage behind a house is being mentored by the homeowner. Somebody living in an apartment, in a 60-unit apartment building, is not. That a gradual increase of housing by adding a cottage or splitting a house existing into a duplex done in historic character would be great for this town. Thanks.
Thank you, Charlie. All right, is there, oh, hi, Patty, come on up. Polly, sorry, Polly. I apologize.
Well, you guys have heard a lot from me already, so I'm not going to be up here very long. And I'd just like to reiterate and agree with everything Catherine just said. We need housing in the city. And I don't think we really have to worry that there's going to be a run on lot splits or even a run on ADUs. Last year we had 1 lot split, and this year we've had 1 lot split, and those weren't or SB9 lot splits. We've had 2 ADUs, so I don't think we're really worried that we're going to change the nature of this city. That's not going to happen. I think what this initiative is about is controlling our architectural review. And that's a big problem for people who own houses, who have to do repairs on their houses. It's just going to slow the whole process down, and it's going to make it much more difficult to repair and keep our homes in really good shape. This is what we want to do. We want to keep the homes that we have, that we're proud of, our architectural heritage, in really good condition. And if we make it too hard for people, if it's going to cost more, then that's going to be a problem. But I'd just like to say also that historic districts tend to shed residents who are renters, non-college educated, and lower income. The data suggests that historic districts have natural segregative effects. Low-density residential zoning is a key cause of both racial and economic segregation. We do not want Nevada City to be known for its unfair housing practices. We really need housing for everyone, and I'm hoping also that we do a 9212 report, because a lot of this has gone on out of public knowledge, and I think the city really deserves to have a report, so.
Thank you, Polly.
Good evening, council members. My name is Kathy Wilcox Barnes, and I'm a lifelong resident of Nevada City and one of the proponents of the Historic Neighborhoods District Initiative. I'll refer to it later as the HND, so you know what I'm talking about. We are here for only one purpose tonight, for the city council to decide when the initiative will go to a vote of the people. We aren't here to discuss the pros or cons of the proposed initiative. That will come later. That being said, I am going to stray just a little bit from my prepared comments, but not far. First, to the gentleman who said it looked like tentacles, I will say if you'd like to talk to us afterwards, there is an explanation for that. It's because those are the tentacles that create that. We chose the 5 historic neighborhoods in Nevada City, and the properties that make it look like tentacles don't fall under SB 9 or the Historic Neighborhoods District. So the other thing that I would like to say is that I feel there's a need to set the record straight. There is an old tactic being used in recent weeks by opponents of the initiative, and that is if you repeat a mistruth enough times and get it printed enough times, people will start to believe it. That is what is happening from opponents of the HND initiative. The proposed Historic Neighborhoods District and the existing historical district are not the same. The regulations in the historical district do not apply to the HND. There are no new regulations in the HND. The regulations for architectural review on single-family zoned parcels have existed for 4 decades or more. They are the regulations that have helped to keep our neighborhoods the places where people want to live and have kept Nevada City at the top of the list of best overall preserved gold rush towns. Claims that the new Historic Neighborhoods District will place new design review standards on property owners are simply not true. There are no new regulations. They have been in the zoning ordinance since 1987, and most were in the 1973 zoning ordinance that preceded that. The general plan is simply adding wording to bring it into conformity with the zoning ordinance. Let me repeat, there are no new regulations. Now that I've made that clear, I would like to address the reason we are here tonight, for the City Council to decide, based on state election laws regarding the placement of a certified initiative on the ballot. I'm a co-sponsor of the initiative. We are not asking for the City Council to do a first reading tonight or adopt it in 2 weeks. We are simply asking the City Council to respect the right of the citizens to vote on the matter in a timely manner.
Kathy?
I'm almost
Okay.
done. I
Sorry.
veered because of the gentleman.
Okay.
We are asking for it to be voted on in a timely manner, up or down, whatever the voters decide. To do that, it needs to be placed on the November 2022 ballot.
Okay.
The delay will issue, setting the citizens up for a divisive 2 years. So,
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate it.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. When SB 9 was being drafted, its proponents linked the bill to the creation of affordable housing in concept only. The reality is that there are no provisions for this. The bill does not require newly created homes or lots to have any affordability covenants or to be restricted to moderate or lower income households. And as Kathy said, the more the supporters of SB 9 choose to mislead the public, it still doesn't make it true. In addition to not actually advocating for affordable housing, SB 9 espouses the trickle-down theory that the more building that occurs, the more the prices will go down, which has not come to reality in California, nor will it happen in Nevada City. In fact, in urbanized neighborhoods such as ours, where housing demand and prices are high, SB 9 could actually exacerbate unaffordability by taking away potential affordable housing locations. Properties could and would be sold or leased at market rate prices. Owners are not likely, nor are they required, to be renting at any kind of low or moderate income level. They will be focused on covering their expenses and maximizing their income. The highest bidder will prevail, and competition increases with developers or investors in the mix competing with a prospective home buyer. A productive focus right now for the city could be securing or actually starting development of affordable housing on properties already zoned for multi-units, such as Gracie Road, the top of Broad Street, Searles Avenue, the Grove, and the City Yard on Zion. But for now, know that SB 9 is not our friend. It doesn't protect our town. Please place the HNDI on the November 8th, 2022 ballot for a democratic vote by all registered voters of Nevada City. Thank you, Rebel.
Hi, my name is Jim Hodamy. I live at 236 American Hill Road, and I'm here as a co-sponsor of the Historic Neighborhoods District Initiative. I wrote down kind of a review of what some of the things that SB 9 does, but I think everybody here is familiar with it. Not every property in Nevada City is big enough to be divided and under SB 9 rules, and I mean, the rules say that you can split a single family property into two lots and have two houses on each. And beyond that, won't go into the ADU or JDU on top of that. That's no law. What Kathy or several speakers were saying is, obviously we all agree that we need more housing, we need workforce housing in Nevada City, but the law itself, SB 9, does not address affordability at all. And to me, actually, as you know, coming from originally moving up here from the Bay Area, that's kind of a shock, because in all the negotiations for housing, affordable housing in the Bay Area, there's always a quid pro quo between developers and city government. And in this case, with this law, there was none. Really, what it does is it gives a lot to developers, and the city gets nothing back. Another thing that's really disturbing about the law is that it's ministerial. This takes the Planning Commission and the City Council out of the process involving any SB 9 property. So the city staff will have limited design review, but there won't be any public input. And there's no requirement to notify neighbors of an SB 9 project. This is undemocratic. In my own experience as owning a property on American Hill, our entire neighborhood over a 16-month period fought a developer who is now talking about using SB 9 to put through his project. And we fought to preserve a historical wall and pathway on city property. Without the support, and really the very diligent support of the Planning Commission and the City Council, we would not have prevailed. So now we have a situation where SB 9 will be eliminating the role of both the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council backing up the Planning Commission in any SB 9 project. So that, that works for some of these developers. It does not work for the community as a whole.
Thanks, Jim. I got to wrap it up.
Okay. We'd like to see this measure go on the ballot. I know a lot of the people that are here on both sides. If we put it on the fall ballot, we have a lot of time to deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Good evening. My name is Douglas Bianchi. I live in 124 Boulder Street. It looks to me like your options for what you can do are very limited. And I had an opportunity to attempt to read the proposal last night for the first time. And I would encourage you to be proactive in organizing the debate and discussion about this issue. Please don't pass the buck. I know from Mr. Mayor, your comments before we began this item, you're a little worried about the heat that it might generate, and I expect it to generate a lot of heat. But I also expect you guys to be proactive in leading and participating in the discussion. So whatever, the more light we can shed on the issue, the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Good evening. I'm Teresa Rodriguez, and I'm a Nevada City resident, and I would encourage you all to put this on the ballot for November 8th, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Candace Hansen. I live on Zion Street. A couple of things. I don't have any prepared comments. One is I live on Zion Street. There are multiple properties on Zion Street that could build, according to SB 9, could build, including my own, could build 2 to 4 units, 2 stories, with ministerial approval. I think there are other properties in Nevada City that you'll find the same thing. So that's really a consideration. The idea of affordable housing is just a never-ending subject nowadays. And I think that's an impossible equation. There will never be enough affordable housing, I don't believe. No one talks about infrastructure when they're talking about it. For my money, I'd rather see duplexes and triplexes interspersed in the neighborhoods. That would be much more intelligent building. So, I think that the voters that followed a process, and I think that the onus is on you guys to do what is called for. And a certain percentage of the voters signed a petition that said, put it on the ballot. So let's put it on the ballot. And lastly, and as soon as possible, I don't mind you guys studying it as long as it ends up on the ballot in November. And lastly, my daughter just got back from Spain, where they fiercely protect their historic neighborhoods. So.
Thank you, Candace. Do we have anybody else in the room that would like to make a public comment? Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Collier. I've lived in Nevada City, worked in Nevada City, consulted for businesses in Nevada City, and currently am a homeowner in the Nevada City Postal Code. I've also been a community advocate for the last 8 years, sat on board of directors, advisory boards, and various committees for local nonprofits. For the last 4 years, I've focused my attention particularly on the housing challenge. It's been surprising how controversial putting peoples in homes is. It's been heartbreaking watching friends, acquaintances, even strangers, many of them young professionals, progressive cultural creators, often with college degrees, some with families, leave our community because of a lack of housing. I know of local young adults just out of school wanting to stay here, live here, and cannot do so because of a lack of housing. Ask any of the businesses in Nevada City about the struggle to maintain an employee base because of the lack of housing. Housing is one of the perennial issues that Nevada City faces, and instead of finding solutions, we are now seeking to create the worst impediment it can for future growth. In my efforts to solve housing issues, I've reached out to housing developers, urban environmental planners, nonprofits, housing advocates, contractors, and realtors. And the overall consensus is that Nevada City is a place where housing projects come to die. The Historic Neighborhood District Initiative's attempt to codify what is already culturally in place by the will of a small number of very influential people. If there's no other proof, look at the number of projects that have been approved and how many of them have been built in the last decade. This ballot, I believe, measures a clash of values that needs to be resolved for those who love this city. Specifically, which is more important, preserving the past or caring for the future of its people. As much as I've admired Nevada City's progressive attitude, and I actually do support and appreciate the historic district and all that it's done, I think that we really have to take a look at that when it comes to prioritizing what is more important, a built environment or the actual lives of living, breathing people. Cashmansfield is a single anomaly of success. You just heard what many people think about it. I fiercely advocated for it. If the Historic District Initiative passes, it basically hamstrings the streamlined process that SB 35 allows for. Many of the opponents who obviously back this initiative see it as a disappointment, a monstrosity, in terms of its size and aesthetics. For me, it's really 150 people, single moms, staff of local businesses that now have a safe, secure, comfortable, affordable place to live in the town that they love. The architectural review process, well, I'm running out of time. I'm out of time. I would just urge you as a city council to actually look at the impact study. I think when we really look at it, SB 9 may impact maybe less than 10% of the actual properties in Nevada City.
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there anybody else in the room? Oh, we got one more. Come on up. Come on up.
Good evening. Steve Dodge, 20 Heilman Court, Nevada City. And I am a voter in Nevada City. And I actually signed the petition to put the historic neighborhood on the ballot. And when it qualified for the ballot, my expectation was that it would go on the November 8th, 2022 ballot. But I guess that's not correct. It'll need a special election. And that's what I'm here to advocate for. I think it does need a special election for the November 2022 ballot. And thank you.
Thank you, Steve. All right, anybody else in the room? We're going to go to the online folks next. All right, hearing none. Gabby, could you check to see who's out there?
Hi, if you would like to speak on this topic, please raise your hand. Okay, first up we have Catherine Enberg. Go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Catherine Enberg. I am a partner with the law firm of Shute Mahali and Weinberger, and I represent the proponents. My firm and I drafted the measure that is before you tonight. My law firm specializes in voter initiatives, and we've done dozens, if not hundreds of them across the state. I just wanted to reinforce a few legal points this evening. Thank you so much for allowing the hybrid meeting, and kudos to you because it's working very well from my perspective. The measure is drafted as a quite simple measure. The measure recognizes existing rules and existing historic neighborhoods. As pointed out by the proponents and others, it does not add any new requirements, and rather just keeps the previous requirements that have been longstanding and in place. The goal of the initiative is really twofold. First, of course, it recognizes the city's historic neighborhoods. Secondly, and also quite importantly, it maintains local control. I've heard a few things about, why does the initiative amend the general plan? This is quite common with land use initiatives and is considered best practice. since the California Supreme Court upheld these types of voter initiatives in the 1990s. So the measure, if adopted, it would add the historic neighborhood district to the general plan and to the zoning code, which would ensure that historic neighborhoods are recognized for generations to come. And within these mapped areas, essentially it would be the status quo before SB 9 applied, which means that the city's longstanding architectural design review provisions would apply to these areas. And without this measure, the state has mandated that ministerial lot splits and duplexes can go through forward without architectural review or public input. I heard a few things about home repairs and that kind of thing, and I did want to note that your existing architectural review procedures do include exceptions for minor projects like repainting and re-roofing and that kind of thing. And this initiative maintains all of those exceptions, and in fact does not lock in place the procedures at all. So those can evolve over time. It also does not affect accessory dwelling units or homeowners' abilities to do those types of projects. In terms of other legal issues, of course, the state Attorney General's office has taken a close look at historic neighborhood districts, and for that reason, this measure was drafted very carefully with historic expert consultation and really a block by block visual inspection of neighborhoods to ensure that each neighborhood included is in fact historic and qualifies as such. So in closing, I do urge the council to go ahead and place this measure on the November 2022 ballot and allow the people of Nevada City to decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, next we have a caller, and I'm not sure your name, but go ahead and talk. Are you there? Go ahead.
We heard something.
Yeah. Can you please unmute yourself? There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Now we can.
Hi, I'm Carrie Anderson. I live on Main Street here in Nevada City, and I went door to door around my neighborhood talking about SB 9 and the idea of an historic neighborhood district initiative. I will say that the vast majority of my neighbors are interested in at least getting the ordinance on the ballot. At that point, we can have a broader conversation about the impacts of SB 9 on our small community with its, aging infrastructure and limited resources, and whether it truly is a practical answer to our housing needs. I think our residents understand what is at stake with the bill, and they can see the benefit of protecting our neighborhoods and our quality of life here, and would like to at least have the ordinance as an option and to exercise their choice when they show up to vote this fall. Judging by the amount of signatures on the petition, I'd ask the council to go ahead and give residents the opportunity to consider the ordinance on the ballot in November and decide for themselves whether it suits our needs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Terry. Is there anyone else?
Next we have Matthew Coulter. Go ahead, Matthew.
Hi, thanks, guys. I hate to make this personal, but I will, because I have a good example of this, and it's my own example. When I moved into my apartment, which I'm living in right now, it's a 7-unit complex, which is built on a site that when I was a child, the original house here, the old lady had goats and chickens, and we all played with them. And currently, it was just purchased. I just paid my first month rent with the new owners out of Walnut Creek, and the rent went from $825, I hate to even say it, to $1,800. And the owner said the market rate for a 2-bedroom apartment currently is $2,300. This is what's happening locally. Yesterday in the Board of Supervisors meeting, Truckee was talking about a campground because they need someplace to put their workers. They have no workers, so they're talking literally about car and tent camping place for workforce housing, which is pretty sad. A lot of people, of course, can't find workers because there is no housing. Yet in Grass Valley, like I said, my building, in my building currently, there's 3 empty units. They haven't filled them in months since pre-escrow. There's another 4-unit building up the street, empty. It's like bungalows now for people to come up and visit. North Church Street, 6-unit place, same thing. Cabins on West Main Street, East Main Street, I mean, being torn down for a motel. So we're losing so much housing, and it's just incredible how much Airbnb and different things are taking over. Because, like I said, money rules. I don't have air conditioning. I mean, they don't need to even have people in these places. There's so many empty places around. So as we think that if we build more, it will mean more housing, that is incorrect philosophy. I'm sorry. Because the people that can afford to build can afford to have them sit empty, is the fact of the matter. And if you can drive around town at night, and it's even better to walk, and look how many places are actually empty and lived in. It's shocking to me compared to what it used to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Next up, we have Barbara Raymer. Go ahead, Barbara.
Barbara, are you there?
Yes.
There you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Barbara Romer, and I live at 325 American Hill Road in the city. I am a YIMBY, a yes in my backyard resident. But in contrast to most YIMBYs, I'm here in support of placing the Historic Neighborhoods District Initiative on the November 2022 Nevada City ballot. For about 20 years, my husband and I have lived in small homes the size of an ADU. 13 years ago, we bought our rundown property in Nevada City. Next to the shabby 1880s farmhouse on the property, we built an ADU and moved into it. A one-bedroom, 750 square foot straw bale home. This ADU is deed restricted to be rented only as affordable housing. The ADU is featured in the city's architectural guidelines as an exemplar of a well-designed ADU. And for 7 years, we made the old farmhouse available at very low rent to young farm interns with Sierra Harvest. Now we've moved into the renovated little farmhouse. We believe in small, appropriate housing. Over the prospective tenure on our property, we could make quite a profit by splitting our large lot and building another house and an ADU or two on each lot. Instead, we chose to conserve a spacious old farmstead and build one low-income ADU. We are delighted that our homes reflect the historic neighborhood aesthetic and have very small footprints, are built with ecological materials, and that, yes, in my backyard there is affordable housing. Had our property been in the hands of an SB 9 developer, none of these considerations would have been made. So yes, I'm a YIMBY who wants to see this initiative put to the people who live in Nevada City. What does it mean to build affordable housing in Nevada City? The median price of housing in the county is about $650,000. It is undoubtedly higher than that within the city. There are fewer than 5 houses currently for sale within the city limits. We're a developer to buy one of these homes, split the lot, add a home to the second lot, and build from 2 to 4 ADUs. You can bet the listing prices would be well above the median. Hardly affordable. No developer will build affordable housing in Nevada City without a mandate and incentives, and that's what we need to work on. It's just not cost effective for them. Developers build to generate wealth. As other people have pointed out, there is no requirement for affordable housing in SB 9. Indeed, SB 9 will provide more housing units that remain unaffordable to even moderate income folks. Because SB 9 permits are ministerial, there is nothing to say that they will conserve the feeling of our town, the aesthetic, cultural, and historic charm that bring both residents and tourists here. With the HN initiative, all of us can choose to build deed-restricted low-income housing that fits into our neighborhoods. Yes to increased density, yes to local design review, yes to participation in the process by people who live here.
Barbara, can you wrap it up? I'm sorry, could you just wrap it up?
Yes, thank you. Yes to affordable housing, yes in my backyard and yours. Please put the Historic Neighborhoods Initiative on the ballot in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Next, we have David F. Go ahead, David.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is David Fallside. I live on Jordan Street in Nevada City. I think that historic district has been a fine thing for the downtown area, but this new initiative, as far as I can tell, seeks to expand it out from the current zone that the historical district operates in, and out into additional neighborhoods. I believe that this, in general, is an attempt to control housing out in the neighborhoods, and will actually negatively impact the building of any new houses. That's not to say that SB 9 is suddenly going to produce a firestorm of new houses. My wife and I, for example, own a 2-acre lot which is currently empty inside the city limits. I think about building affordable housing on it, but the reality of the width of Jordan Street is that I'll never be able to do that. So this idea that there's going to be a huge number of new buildings which don't conform to any kind of architectural review, I think is just doesn't hold water. One other point I'd like to address, I've heard several people say that, if we get more housing in this area, then the prices will just still be high. That's not how the market works, guys. If there's more housing, then people have to lower the rates in order to get people to buy them, because they're all priced at $1 million, and there's 100,000 of them. No one's going to buy them. So I'm just going to have to lower the price in order to get people to buy them. That's how the market works. Okay, so I would like to see this measure on the ballot as soon as possible, and I would also be in favor of the city doing a further study. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Next up, we have Stephen Greenberg. Go ahead, Stephen.
Okay, I've just unmuted. Have I done it successfully?
Yes, you have.
Thanks very much, Council. I want to focus on the study option, which the last speaker just referred to, and about half the speakers have referred to. And I want to point out something that's absent from every letter that I've read from the proponents in email, and everything that we've heard from the proponents of the initiative tonight. No one has addressed the study option and explained why it's a bad idea. To me, getting more information, producing more information with a staff report, a study report, that's a great idea for a controversial issue like this one. And since we've not heard a single speaker or writer address why it's not a good idea, I see no reason why the council wouldn't pick that option. It's easily the most responsible thing to do. It does put at least my understanding is, it would put the measure on the ballot for June 2024 rather than November 2022. But aside from there being a lot to study, learn about, discuss, debate, et cetera, there's another bonus advantage to putting it on the ballot in June 2024. Nevada City has no election currently in November of this year. That's why it would be a special election. So it's an off year for Nevada City voters. I'm not saying nobody's going to vote here, but in June 2024, there are going to be 3 council seats on the ballot. That's a majority of the city council. There'll be signs all over town. There are going to be debates between council members. If this measure is on the ballot at the same time, that sounds like a great idea for democracy here in Nevada City. Candidates will be taking positions one way or another on the ordinance. Debates will include the ordinance or the initiative. So there's every reason, from my perspective, to place this on the June 2024 ballot. Probably get a lot higher turnout, voter turnout as well. Again, because there is a Nevada City election, 3 seats up for grabs. For that matter, if in the next year or so any more initiative petitions turn up or referendum petitions, those would also be on the June 2024 ballot, a regular election for Nevada City. Let's see, did I have something else I wanted to say? No, I think that'll do it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Stephen.
Okay, next we have Greg Chapman. Go ahead, Greg.
Hey, good evening.
So I'm Greg Chapman. I live on Main Street, Nevada City. Been downtown for about 30 years, coming up on 30 years. And one of the things I find with the discussions about SB 9, we don't discuss parking. Almost nobody in Nevada City has off-street parking. And even with the new ADUs, we're going to have an influx of people if everybody starts building ADUs. And if we would look at the short-term rental situation, we've never put any limitations on short-term rentals, which are taking a lot of our long-term housing off the market, driving up home prices. I think we need to address some of those issues before we look at letting people split their lots. In my situation here on Main Street, if we split our lot, which we could probably do, I don't know where anybody would park. We've got the school here. We've got people from downtown parking on our streets, which happens in most of the neighborhoods. And I think ultimately the residents of Nevada City need to be able to decide this. It shouldn't be going to a study which allows people to split their lots for 2 years, get under the wire. So I'd like to see this put on the November 2022 election and let the voters decide, the residents of downtown Nevada City. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Do we have anybody else out there in Zoom land who would like to speak? Please raise your hand. We do not, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Gabby. All right. Okay, we've heard a lot of great comments here. I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the comments. I'm sorry if I was a little flipped before about security. I'm not really worried about security here. That was just a flip comment. So at this point, I'm going to bring it back to the table here. And does Darren, you have anything to say about you look like you're about to.
When I am prepared to make a motion when ready.
Okay. Is there anybody who would like to comment? Otherwise, I think we are ready for a motion.
I would like to comment.
Okay.
I just want to remind folks that are watching at home, might watch this later, that are here, and I know this has been said over and over again, but regardless of what my position is personally, whether I like this initiative or not, whether anybody at this table likes this initiative or not, this initiative was citizen-led. This is not a city, this is not a council initiative. Citizen-led, they went through the process, they got the signatures, and our options are limited today. So I just want to remind folks of that, that this is not about supporting the initiative or not, but about the 4 options about how we move forward with putting the initiative on the ballot. Just wanted to reframe that once more.
Thank you, Daniela. That was great. I think that needed to be said.
So I move that we adopt a resolution that calls a special election on the proposed ordinance for November 8th, 2022.
I second that.
Okay. Can we get a roll call, Gabby?
Councilmember Cece.
Yes.
Councilmember Klein.
No.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fernandez.
Yes.
Mayor Fleming.
Yes. And I'd like to add a caveat, though, not to the motion. Let's go ahead on that. I'd just like to make a recommendation or a request that staff goes back and conducts a study on this issue. And this is not the 9212 study, but just a study on the issue, so we have more information and we can talk intelligently with our residents about the impact this will have on them. That's something that's a little bit more neutral and a little more dispassionate, just so we can provide accurate information to our residents, because we've all been getting lots of questions, and they've been, a lot of them have been misinformed or just don't understand the concept here, or some of the concepts. A lot of people do. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody, but I just would hope that staff could come back to us a relatively quick meeting and give us some idea of what the impact would be for the city.
Particularly because we have just under 3 months, so it has to be, as quick and but efficient as possible.
As a maker of the motion, I would accept that as an amendment.
It really doesn't need to be an amendment. I think we have the resolution, just for clarity for the record, that we have the resolution that's calling for the special election for the proposed ordinance on November 8th, 2022, passed by a vote of 4-0 with separate direction from a majority of the council to staff to conduct an impact study and bring it back within a reasonable amount of time. Thank you.
4-1.
I don't think it was 4-0.
Sorry, 4-1. Sorry, my I didn't see him.
All right, folks, we're going to move on with the rest of the show. And I think at this point, we're going to ask our wonderful city manager to give his city manager report.
It's 9:04, so the show's over, but just a quick plug for next Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. here at City Hall on the 17th, second session of the strategic planning workshop. This will be the fun one for everyone looking for their input on goals and priorities for the city. And that's all I have for you this evening, Mr. Mayor. 5:30 p.m. That's right here in council chambers.
Okay, and now it's time for, thank you, Mr. City Manager. Now it's time for council member reports.
Sure. If I could just ask, as folks are leaving, to please respect the fact that we're still in a meeting. Thank you so much.
Okay, and does anybody have anything to report here? I know it's late, so we can.
I do.
Lou had his hand up there, so I'm going to.
This is not a report. I just want to thank the city staff and the council members for their condolences on the loss of my mother, who passed away on July 31st. You have been very understanding and supportive, and that includes you, Chief, for your special considerations. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. That was very nice. Daniela?
Yeah, just wanted to say that State Treasurer Fiona Ma will be in town in Nevada City on Tuesday, August 30th. She and I will be hosting a listening session for merchants at 5:15 at Communal Cafe on Broad Street. She wants to hear about how merchants have been impacted by COVID-19. There are still many funds available from the state for underrepresented/rural communities like ours. So this will be important. We want to invite all merchants in Western Nevada County to join us for that.
Thank you, Daniela. Gary, do you have anything?
I think I did earlier, but I don't now.
Yeah, I've kind of lost.
It's gone.
Well, we can save that for next time. And you know what I'm looking for?
I move that we...
I'm a person with thoughts and feelings.
I was looking at you first.
But this isn't about the feelings right now.
I was
I'm
looking
just
at
a
you.
person.
Council report back.
You just looked at me and I didn't think you had.
I just
Sorry.
want to encourage everybody to participate in the strategic planning on the 17th that Sean just mentioned, because it's wildly important.
Thank you.
That's what I had.
See, you did it for him. All right, so now I'm looking for.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All right, first by Gary, second by Daniela, and we are out of here. Thank you.